Let us take a moment before the clock strikes, oh blimey, to look back on the year that was in the wrestling with the A to Z or Z of 2021. A is for All Out, AEW's pay-per-view that saw the in-ring return of CM Punk. Away from that, we had the AEW debuts of Ruby Soho, Minoru Suzuki, Adam Cole, and then about 90 seconds later, Bryan Danielson. Imagine putting on a show with the return of CM Punk being an afterthought. That's kind of what happens. Hey, talking of bombs being dropped, one man dropped quite the bombshell with a briefcase, as B is for Big E, who started 2021 as the Intercontinental Champion. In the middle of the year, he was Mr. Money in the Bank, and by the end of the year, he was riding high as WWE Champion. He's had some of the best matches in his career in the process, firmly established as a top guy in WWE, which is amazing to see. That pop when he won the title was quite something, but not the biggest pop of the year. That went to our next entrant, C, which is for CM Punk. We mentioned it just then, and we can't not talk about it because this is the year that those CM Punk return videos you see on wrestling YouTube channels like this one finally died a death as CM Punk actually returned to wrestling as part of AEW. Since then, he's been cutting impassioned promos and putting on some stellar in-ring work with the likes of Darby Allin at All Out and Eddie Kingston just a short while ago. And there's more to come from Punk as part of AEW. The wrestling pipe bombs returned in 2021 and also in documentary form on Vice. There were some pipe bombs dropped too, as D is for Dark Side of the Ring. It was the third season of Dark Side of the Ring this year, where amongst the 14 episodes that we got, we had deep dives into the careers of Brian Pillman and Chris Kanyon. We saw the controversy behind the collision in Korea, and we saw some of the shocking developments from the plane ride from hell in 2002, as some of the ructions from the documentary still being felt in the wrestling world today. We also had an episode based on Onita and the FMW years that were rolled back in our next letter, E, for Exploding Barbed Wire Deathmatch. Yes, Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley doing their Onita nod of the hat at AEW Revolution. Really engaging match right up till the end, in which they were hoping for the ring to explode and shock to ripple around the wrestling world. We kind of got an end that was sort of less ultimate destruction, more Ipswich Bonfire Night show. Better luck next time. From an attempted literal bombshell to a metaphorical one, or rather, multiple metaphorical ones, as F is for Forbidden Door. It's been kicked open. It is quite the phrase that has been used across the wrestling landscape. AEW really getting the ball on the door rolling, allowing wrestlers in from New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, multiple independent promotions, AAA getting involved as well. And in return, we've seen AEW stars not only popping up around the indie circuit, but popping up in AAA, popping up in New Japan, both in Japan and of America, and of course an AEW star holding the Impact Championship on 2 occasions. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. There was all sorts going on in the Forbidden Door action. A little less glory from the cosmos due to mitigating circumstances for our next letter, as G is for the G1 Climax, New Japan Pro Wrestling's big end-of-year tournament to set the pace for Wrestle Kingdom. Normally, it's a bit of a showcase of talent from all over the world. However, due to COVID travel restrictions, it felt a bit snake bit this year, and that was something that was felt right to the very end of the tournament, where we had Kota Ibushi go down with a legitimate injury during the final, and the match being stopped and awarded to Okada. A great tournament. They did what they could with what they had, but yeah, real snake bit, and a bitter sweet result for Okada. It was a completely sweet result, though, for our next entrant, H, which is for Hangman Page, who wrapped up quite a 12 months, didn't he? Starting out roughly a year ago, November of last year, as an underperforming, alcohol-fueled, anxious cowboy, ending 2021 as an overachieving, rejuvenated, still somewhat anxious cowboy. A great slow burn story that saw Hangman Page fulfill his destiny and his potential by becoming the AEW champion in the grandest fashion possible. I is for Impact Wrestling. Want to give a nod to Impact, who have had a really busy year. It's been a lot of cross promotion with AEW, with All Elite Wrestling, with New Japan Pro Wrestling. We've seen NWA and AAA stars all popping up in and around Impact Wrestling as well. But they brought the focus back by the end of the year onto one of their own, with the rise of Josh Alexander to the top of the company as Impact Heavyweight Champion. A result that lasted probably 2 minutes at most, as Moose took the belt from him and set the path for what is to come with Impact. Good things on the horizon for Impact Wrestling. It's easy to see, but what is not so easy to see is J, which is for John Cena. It was the return of the Hollywood guy, John Cena, taking a break from filming numerous things to come and be a part of WWE's return to live shows. He was surprised at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view and stood up to Roman Reigns for several weeks. Some great promos back and forth with them, all culminating in a title match at SummerSlam, which Roman Reigns perseveres and wins. And seeing Cena back as a way of packing out SummerSlam and numerous WWE shows as they got the fans back, it was good to see that in all that time, Cena hadn't lost a step. He was very much money for WWE. And when we talk about money, we come to our next letter, K, which is for Khan. Two particular Khans when we speak about this. Tony Khan, who is, the guy behind AEW right now, in case you didn't know. We've seen Tony take on a more active role in the creative process of AEW and isn't one to, celebrate a big win. We've seen him on Twitter quite a lot over the last 12 months, really like celebrating big results for AEW. When some say he should be quiet, Tony Khan has been shouting. He also got into a little bit of a back and forth with Max Caster. There was some fun times had there. And then the other Khan, of course, is Nick Khan, WWE's president and chief revenue officer. This is the man who said, hey, if we could get enough advertising to cover it, I'd love Raw to be 7 hours. Very much the Mr. Krabs of the wrestling world is Nick Khan. Very much a McMahon whisperer in 2021, behind some of the streamlining and the more commercialization of WWE that we have seen. There was some big wrestling returns in 2021, but arguably the biggest of all of them was you and I, as L stands for live fans. The second part of 2021 saw crowds back at the wrestling after 18 months away following COVID. It was Money in the Bank, the first pay-per-view event, obviously with the exception of WrestleMania that was held a few months before going back into a controlled environment. And AEW and Impact Wrestling all getting back in front of live crowds. However, fans have mostly been good. Some have repaid the favour by jumping the barrier and trying to attack some of the wrestlers. On at least 2 occasions, we've done that. Thank you very much. From welcoming back to saying goodbye, M has been for mass releases in WWE in particular, more than anywhere else, in an effort to streamline the bottom line and improve their already incredible revenue. WWE has been releasing and and future endeavoring a lot of stars, talent, and backstage personnel in 2021. And some big names have gone throughout this. We've seen the likes of Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt, Keith Lee, and many people who were sort of sort of obvious cannot miss stars gone as well throughout all of this. Enough stars, in fact, over 80 let go from WWE in 2021. Enough to start another big wrestling promotion if you felt so inclined. So there's been a lot of change in 2021, hasn't there? Change coming in many different forms, including our next letter, N, which is for NXT 2.0. As all the changes were coming in to NXT, it was a new splash of paint, a splatter of multiple colours of paint. We saw Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard take more of the reins of this developmental territory. In doing so, it got a new look, the CWC got a new feel, and we debuted roughly 549 young stars for NXT 2.0. But we can now, with Vince and Bruce steering the ship more than Triple H was, in their eyes, we can see guys like Bron Breakker, Von Wagner, and Toxic Attraction getting optimistically good call-ups in 2022 or 2023. We'll cross all things, shall we? We'll cross all things. O is for Omega. Kenny Omega, to be exact, who has held the AEW Championship for the majority of 2021 and proved why he continues to be called the best bout machine. Getting in there, exploding barbed wire finish aside, let's not unacknowledge that. He's had some show stealers as AEW champ with the likes of Bryan Danielson, Christian Cage, and of course Hangman Page as well. At one point holding the AEW, the Impact Wrestling, and the AAA Mega Heavyweight Championships at the same time. That's some real best bout machine stuff right there, isn't it? The way that some of the world watched the wrestling changed in 2021 as well. As P is for Peacock. In time for WrestleMania, WWE started migrating the WWE network over to NBC's streaming service. This comes after multiple conversations of WWE looking to offload the network. Now, it's not been an easy ride. There's been glitches, technical palaver. It seems to have overall been sort of sorting itself out. And with Peacock now appearing to have launched in the United Kingdom, maybe we should keep one eye on that Peacock here in old Blighty. Now, we may not know much about Peacock problems right now, but we do know a fair bit about monarchy. And Q is for the Queen's Crown Tournament. WWE crowning their first ever Queen of the Ring in this particular year. A tournament that was not met with critical acclaim due to the lack of time and real thought that went into the presentation of it, but it gave Queen Zelina Vega chance to really shine as a new character. Now back in the fold of WWE. You know what? She's having the time of her life, putting on a British accent and doing the wave. You love to see it. From crowns to rings. Well, one ring in particular. R is for Ring of Honor. They, like all the other promotions, were shut down for a lengthy time during COVID. During quarantines around the world. They came back in front of no fans and have stayed that way consistently, and announced that they would be going on hiatus at the start of 2022 to reimagine what the promotion is all about. And they also, in doing so, released all of their talent from their contracts, allowing them to go forth to other places. So we've already seen some big ROH stars rocking up in other places since then. Some big stars rocks up at the biggest party of the summer. S is, of course, for SummerSlam. WWE putting on a big show at the Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. It was a show that saw Bobby Lashley and Goldberg go one-on-one. We saw Edge and Seth Rollins have a blinder. John Cena and Roman Reigns headline the whole thing. And we saw the returns of Brock Lesnar, now looking a bit like a butcher, and Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch even becoming the SmackDown Women's Champion in less than 30 seconds. Controversially. We've talked about that enough. Thunderous returns from WWE and for WWE in 2021. But let's not forget, we spent the first part of this year being pretty thunderous, as T is for Thunderdome. Now, I know, right? You forgot that we spent a big part of 2021 inside WWE's dystopian Zoom call Warzone. In fact, quite a few some of the bigger moments of the year started early on in there, and then they went into cruise control, waiting for fans to get back, didn't they? But yeah, lest we forget, from January till about May, with the exception of WrestleMania, we were still in the Thunderdome, piping your own shocked crowd reaction to that particular bit of news. The Thunderdome, however, is very much in the rear-view mirror, and they are moving on, and they have moved out of the Thunderdome. Thankfully, one thing was not lost in transit is our next letter, U, which is for the Universal Championship. It is the only championship in WWE that has not changed hands throughout the entirety of 2021. It is very much in the beefy hands of the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns, who has been the biggest star in the company, hands down, throughout the year. Not only has he been putting on some stellar performances in promos and in stories, but also in ring. He's been really getting into it. Guys like Edge and Daniel Bryan, Cesaro, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, and maybe some bigger opponents on the horizon. If you smell what I'm cooking, maybe. It's been a standout year either way for Roman Reigns and the Universal Championship, which has been very much the peak of WWE programming. V is for video games. So we know AEW got into the mobile app business in 2021, and they're working on a console video game release as well, with people that put together WWE's classic titles. WWE games, in the meantime, have taken a bit longer than expected. We were initially, at the start of the year, thinking we'd get an all-new 2K game by the end of this year, but they said, look, we're still working out a lot of, the nightmares we had with the last one. So we're going to bring it out in 2022 instead. And we've already seen some glimpses of that, and it is looking better. Not only have they been dealing with some technical nightmares, but also an ever-changing roster, which I'm sure there's been many headaches about at 2K Towers over that, but a new game is on the cards. From video game glitches to weather warnings, W is for WrestleMania 37. From Raymond James Stadium, a two-night affair that was almost halted for bad weather. Wasn't it good? That was good, wasn't it? There's something warm about them stalling and getting people doing promos and stuff. It felt like the wrestling was back. It was the last time we would see The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, as part of WWE television, at least in an in-ring capacity. Anyway, he obviously appeared on Raw, but in ring capacity. Anyway, not only that, but we would see Bianca Belair headline night one with Sasha Banks in a classic. We would also see the wrestling debut of Bad Bunny. Before, he rode in on that big 18-wheeler and everything. Roman Reigns was stacking up Edge and Daniel Bryan, as he was then called, in the main event of night two as well. Felt like a little semblance of order and normality to see WrestleMania back in front of a large crowd. X is for Xavier Woods. What a year for Woods. The boyhood dream came true for Woods in 2021 when he became the king of the ring at Crown Jewel. And you know what? Since then, he has been really stepping it up and getting amongst it and stepping out of his New Day teammates, both now with WWE championships on their sheets. Xavier Woods is cutting his own path through, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of King Woods in 2022. Y is for why did you put so much focus on an egg at Survivor Series? Why did you keep telling us like it was The Rock's anniversary, playing multiple videos of The Rock's greatest moments? Why did you have Roman Reigns do a rock bottom when he wasn't going to turn up? Why did you make us think that The Rock was going to appear at the end of the year? Why did you do that? Why? And Z is for zombies, because it was back at WrestleMania Backlash that, like WWE did with Netflix series Red Notice, WWE struck a deal with Dave Bautista's zombie film Army of the Dead, and it led to a zombie lumberjack match between Damian Priest and The Miz. A match that seemingly ended with The Miz being eaten alive by zombies. So, if you're not quite sure how you're spending New Year's yet, So there's an idea. Have an amazing new year. Let's do this countdown again next year. Hopefully, with more exciting things to talk about. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never eaten by zombies? Stay safe. Love you. Bye.